Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rock News Roundup podcast, your source for the latest in rock music news and discussion here on the Nick Chino Music Channel. I'm your host. My name is Nick Chino. I want to thank you for joining me on this inaugural episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast. I guess I could call it inaugural. It's actually kind of a restart of a podcast. But if you want to talk to me or you want to chat about any of the topics on today's episode of the show, you can follow me on social media at Nick Chino Music. And then you can also email me some questions or go in the comments of this video if you're on YouTube and email me those questions at nickchinomusic@gmail.com. And again, want to thank everybody for joining me on this inaugural episode of the show. This is kind of a restart of a podcast that I did here a few years ago in the show. I want to say around 2021, I started doing a podcast here on the channel that was very much about rock music news and discussion. And that kind of trailed off over the years as I got more into long form kind of videos talking about various topics. But I always wanted to restart this podcast because I've wanted to go in more in depth and more long form on some of these topics that we really love, these topics in the world of rock music news, talking about the bands that we love. And so I've decided to restart it here with this new episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Yeah, I don't even know what it's called. Rock News Roundup podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me on this inaugural episode of the show. And basically on this episode of the show, we're going to be talking about some hot topics in the world of rock music news, what I like to call headliners. And like I said, hop in the comments below to talk about any of the topics that we're talking about here on the show. And as a podcast, this will be available beyond the world of YouTube because it'll be available on streaming. So if you want to check it out, the audio version of this podcast will be available on Spotify and Apple Music and all sorts of other places if you want to check it out. But let's get into our headliner topics for this episode of the show. And it feels like right now there is tour announcement fever going on. It seems like every band under the sun is announcing a tour right now. Today alone, I was scrolling through my feed this morning, and today alone, I saw that Creed are relaunching their Summer of 99 North American tour in 2025, continuing what they did this year. And they got some great openers on this one as well. Mammoth WVH, of course, that is Wolfgang Van Halen's band, one of my favorite current rock bands out there, as well as Three Doors Down, if you love your 90s and 2000s rock. Daughtry is going to be there as well. And then Big Wreck is going to be opening up some of the dates for the tour with Creed as well, and they're one of my favorite Canadian bands. So if you haven't seen Big Wreck, they're going to be a fantastic opener for this Creed tour. But a couple other ones I want to mention: Coheed and Cambria are also going on tour as well with Mastodon and Periphery. That's a really solid triple bill happening right there. That's going to be happening next spring across the U.S. And there are some other tours that are happening as well that I'll mention in just a couple of minutes. But we have to talk about this one. Guns N' Roses have announced a 2025 international tour with the tagline. Check this out. This is a very Guns N' Roses tagline for this tour, because what you want and what you get are two completely different things. Yeah. Kind of a long tagline, but very Guns N' Roses. I think they could use to maybe shorten that up just a little bit. But this tour is going to start in Saudi Arabia on May the 23rd, 2025. It's going to go through the Middle East, and then it's going to go through Europe as well. Some really big tour dates happening here through Italy, Spain, Germany, the UK, and then it ends in Wacken, Germany on July the 31st. And then check out some great openers for this as well. Some really solid openers for this tour. I feel like we don't really get great openers like this for Guns N' Roses or bands of their ilk in North America, but Public Enemy, Rival Sons, one of my favorite bands out there right now, and then the Sex Pistols featuring Frank Carter. Those different opening acts are going to rotate throughout the course of the tour. And then the pre-sale for the Guns N' Roses Night Train fan club members, that's already going on. So if you're a fan club member, you can get in on that if you're going to be going to any of those shows in any of those cities across the Middle East and into Europe. And then the general on sale for this is going to be on Friday, December the 13th at 9 a.m. local time. So wherever you are in the world, that's what time the tickets are going to be going on sale for this tour. Now, me personally, I don't know if I would pick up tickets to Guns N' Roses as they are right now, because I did see them back in 2017. It was kind of funny. I was working at a radio station at the time, and we went on a party bus to Toronto to go see Guns N' Roses at the Air Canada Centre, which is now known as Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. All the different DJs, we all went on the party bus along with some winners, some contest winners who won tickets to the show on the radio. Fun times on the party bus, but then actually the actual Guns N' Roses show, to me, left a little bit to be desired. Now, don't get me wrong, Slash, he was absolutely incredible. I've always wanted to see Slash play live, and he did not disappoint because he's Slash. He's always going to kick ass. Axl, however, he sounded okay. I got to hand it to him for continuing to try to sing those Guns N' Roses songs, because they are not easy to sing in whatever capacity whatsoever, especially when he's gotten older now and he doesn't have the same vocal ability that he did back in the day. But he sounded okay. I think maybe I was being a little bit harsh on him at the time. So maybe he didn't sound as bad as I remember. But the thing is that it reminded me about that Guns N' Roses show is that it really reminded me that I need to brush up on my Guns N' Roses, and I don't really know that much Guns N' Roses beyond their big radio hits and maybe a select portion of their album tracks. And then when they were playing live, I'm like, what song is this? And then with the way Axl Rose was singing, it didn't really make it any easier to decipher which those songs were beyond the big Guns N' Roses singles. So that was an interesting concert for me. Maybe not my favorite concert, but I think they still sound great live. Going to see Slash live is always a treat. And then I think it's funny, really, because old school Guns N' Roses fans will remember, or anybody who remembers the dark years when everybody was hoping that the original Guns N' Roses lineup, or as many of them as possible, were getting back together. Nobody ever thought that would happen through the Chinese democracy years, the years when Axl was playing with Buckethead and doing all that sort of stuff. We never thought that reunion would happen, but you know what? Anything can happen these days. And they've been going strong. Like, Axl's been showing up every single night, playing and singing. He hasn't canceled any shows. I don't think he shows up late anymore, as far as I know. So that's pretty cool that in 2024, 2025, that Guns N' Roses are still doing their thing and still going strong. And there haven't been too many mishaps with the band. So if you are a fan of the band and you live in the Middle East or you live in Europe, they're going to be going on tour next year. The pre-sale is happening right now for the Night Train fan members. And if you're a bigger fan of Guns N' Roses, you want to go to the general on sale, you can do that this Friday. So let's get to the next topic here on the headliners for this episode of the Rock News Roundup, and that is System of a Down is going back on tour. That's right. They're making their triumphant return to the stage in 2025, playing some huge stadium shows in the summer of next year. And they got some really heavyweight openers to open up for this show. Check this out. August 28th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, they're going to be playing with Korn. So that's a pretty good double bill. August 31st at Soldier Field in Chicago, they're going to be playing with Avenged Sevenfold. And then September 3rd at Rogers Stadium in Toronto, in my neck of the woods, they're going to be playing with Deftones. Those are three absolutely solid double bills that are going to be happening. So tickets for that go on sale Wednesday, December 11th through Live Nation. And this is pretty much they're doing the typical stadium rock tour dates that every band seems to be doing right now. I know Oasis, a lot of the dates they're doing for the stadium rock shows in North America are happening at the same venue. Same for My Chemical Romance, who recently announced and sold out their stadium tour for next year. And so every band is doing Soldier Field in Chicago. Every band is doing MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Every band is doing Rogers Stadium in Toronto. The thing is about Rogers Stadium, though, is that this venue doesn't actually exist yet, at least as far as I know. I haven't been keeping up to date with the construction of Rogers Stadium, but this venue does not exist yet in Toronto. They are building it especially for these events happening in 2025. It's actually going to be a temporary concert venue in Toronto near Downsview Park that is going to be there for about 4 or 5 years, as far as I know. And then after that, it's going to be torn down and turned into a condo development or a new development. So basically, it's going to be there temporarily. And as far as I know, they haven't started building anything yet. It's already winter here in Canada, here in Hamilton and Toronto, in our region in Southern Ontario. So I don't feel like they're going to be building anything in the immediate future. I feel like they're going to have to wait until the spring to be able to build this venue. It is a temporary venue, so they might be able to get it up a little bit quicker. But then they have Oasis playing there next year. They have Coldplay playing there next year. And now they have System of a Down and Deftones playing there next year. And so as somebody who has tickets for the Oasis show, their reunion show in Toronto next year, I'm a little bit worried that this venue might not actually be built. Not to say that they can't just relocate to, I guess maybe Rogers Center would be the next biggest thing, or the biggest thing that could accommodate that kind of show. But right now, I'm a little bit worried that they're actually going to be playing this venue. This venue is actually going to be happening. It's going to be real for these bands to play. And when you think about System of a Down, they don't get along well enough to play together on an album, but they do get along well enough to go out and make a ton of money playing live shows. And I know live shows are completely different beasts than going into the studio, making a creative endeavor and making a creative product, which I feel like maybe System of a Down doesn't have the capacity to do right now because of their various, not to get into it, various political disagreements and such. But I know that they can probably get in a room enough together to be able to go out and play these shows and make a little bit of money. And really some pretty heavy duty double bills on here as well. Deftones in Toronto is very, very tempting. I pretty much spent all my money trying to get those Oasis tickets when they went on sale a couple of months ago, and so that's very much the concert I want to go to. But my girlfriend Danielle, she's a big fan of Deftones. I'm a huge Deftones fan as well, and so this is very, very tempting to try and maybe see if we can get some tickets. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier than trying to get Oasis tickets. So, and then when I'm thinking about this, Deftones opening up for System of a Down next year. What is going on right now with the Deftones? Because I know they have a new album in the works. I know that they're working on something, and maybe the new album is already in the can. I thought that it was going to come out in 2024, but it hasn't. And so it looks like 2025 is going to be the year for the Deftones to come back and make a new record. I think it would probably be out before they do this show with System of a Down. But as far as double bills go, come on, look at these double bills. With Korn, again, August 28th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, August 31st at Soldier Field in Chicago with Avenged Sevenfold, and then September the 3rd at Rogers Stadium in Toronto with Deftones. These are some pretty hefty duty double bills. So good to see System of a Down back on the stage again and touring again with some really, really great bands. So those tickets will be going on sale this week. And then one other tour that I want to mention is The Used are going to be celebrating their 25th anniversary in 2025. Their first three albums, they're going to be playing in full at each of these shows. Their 2002 self-titled record, which is the one that I'm most familiar with, one of my favorite records from when I was back in college, as well as In Love and Death, which came out in 2004, I believe, and then 2007's Lies for the Liars. So each city and each night, they're going to be playing a different record in full in Detroit, Boston, New York, Chicago, Denver, LA, San Diego, as well as a couple of other cities that are on that tour as well. It's going to kick off April the 3rd and it's going to run until May the 16th in the spring of 2025. And like I said, 3 nights for each city, performing each album for each night. That is a pretty hefty tour, whether that be from a set list and a production standpoint for the stage production, because to be able to put something together every night for a different album, and then to be able to sell out and fill those venues. Not to say that I don't think The Used is capable of filling out those venues, but I do think that is really ambitious for any band to try and embark on a different album each night in each city. I do feel like they'll probably do really well. Will it sell out? I'm not really too sure, but I really do love when bands do this. I love when they honor their classic albums. I know Weezer's done that in the past, where they've played the Pinkerton album or the Blue album in full every night. Really, really cool. Biffy Clyro did that recently, where they played their first 3 albums in full every night as well. And I really think that's a good way for bands to go out there and to continue to honor and play their back catalog. Although I think The Used are still really strong with their new material as well. Their Toxic Positivity album, which came out last year, and then the Meds album, which I think came out earlier this year or last year as well. Those really, really solid efforts from The Used. And I actually saw The Used live last year at Echo Beach in Toronto. And it was a very, very interesting show. We got rained out for a bunch. Anyways, we went to go see Don Broco because Don Broco was opening up for The Used. We wanted to see Don Broco. They got rained out, but we ended up seeing Pierce the Veil and The Used, and I really enjoyed that. It was like reliving my college years. That first debut record from The Used in 2002 was a huge record for me in my first year of university. When I think back to songs like Taste of Ink or Buried Myself Alive, songs like that, On My Own, Blue and Yellow, I believe, is the other one that I really liked. And then some of the other tracks from some of the other records. Another track that I really got into was called Pretty Handsome Awkward, which is from that record in 2007, which is Lies for the Liars. I got into that last year when I saw them live. Really great song. And then Burt McCracken says that these are the albums that put The Used on the map, and he's absolutely right. These are the records that made everybody Used fans. Like I said, I don't know. Like, can the Used sell out these venues playing these albums in full every night in each of these cities? I'm not too sure, but you can let me know in the comments below whether you think that's possible and if you're going to be getting tickets for these Used tour dates. Like I said, absolute tour announcement mania happening right now. It's December. There's not really a lot going on in terms of new music or new releases or anything going like that. Everybody's pretty much winding down for the year, but all these bands are just announcing tours left, right, and center for 2025. Because of the price of tickets these days, it's very hard to pick and choose which of these shows to go to, but it's still really cool. So the Used are going to be going on tour in 2025. And Led Zeppelin are coming to IMAX. That's right. They're going to be coming to IMAX theaters in 2025 with a new documentary called Becoming Led Zeppelin. It's going to hit over 200 IMAX theaters worldwide on February the 7th, 2025. This is the first ever fully authorized Led Zeppelin documentary directed by Bernard McMahon, who I'm not very familiar with his work, but his name is on this documentary. And some early access screenings are going to be happening for this thing in 18 cities on February the 5th, a couple of days before the wide opening for this in IMAX theater. So tickets for that are on sale right now. But this is actually really, really cool. This is going to feature a never before heard interview with the late great drummer of Led Zeppelin, Mr. John Bonham. It's going to feature new interviews with the remaining members, the living members of Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and Jimmy Page. And it's going to have all that information, all that documented archival footage from Led Zeppelin that we've never seen before. And this is the first time that the story is being told in the band's own words. And like I said, the first time that this is the fully authorized story of Led Zeppelin in movie form, in documentary form. When you think about it, there's not many films like this about Led Zeppelin. When you think about a band like the Beatles, I feel like we've gotten so many documentaries about the Beatles, whether it be in depth like the Beatles anthology, which came out in the 90s, which documented their entire career from beginning to end. And then when you think about more recent things like Get Back, or the release of the original Let It Be movie, or the release of the latest Beatles 64 documentary that was produced by Martin Scorsese, we know very much about the entire Beatles story. There's not really any parts of the Beatles story that we're not really familiar with, but I can't really say I know that, or I know those things about Led Zeppelin. I obviously know the records, I know the music very, very well from over the years, but I can't say I know the entire story or the different beats of their story throughout the years, all the stories behind the making of their record, and how they really, I know they came out of being in the New Yardbirds and how they all got together. I understand the basics of that story, but definitely not as in depth as it was, or as it is with the Beatles. So I'm very excited to learn more about Led Zeppelin and learn more about their story, and kind of see that overarching story between basically 1968, 1969 to 1980 with the death of John Bonham, and told in their own words. Again, unlike the Beatles, where it feels like Paul McCartney and Ringo have been out there for years in various different mediums, in various different forms, talking about the history of the Beatles, talking about the legacy of the Beatles. I feel like the Led Zeppelin members in general are a lot more quiet about the legacy of Led Zeppelin and their stories. So very excited to see and hear the various things that they're going to be doing in this documentary. And with Led Zeppelin, they were a very important band, obviously, for hard rock and for popular modern rock back at that time. But they signaled the beginning of the 1970s and the rise of hard rock and the rise of stadium rock, along with other bands of that era like Black Sabbath and other different bands of that era. But they really were the next generation after the Beatles. The Beatles were the band of the 1960s, and I would argue that Led Zeppelin were the band of the 1970s. They really were that rock band, that really blockbuster rock band that dominated the charts and dominated rock music in 1970. Not to say there's not many great bands that came out of that era. Of course, we know there are so many great bands that defined and really documented in that era that really were such a big deal. But Zeppelin, to me, really were that big stadium, that big headline band of the 1970s. So excited to see this documentary. And when you think about it, Zeppelin and IMAX is a very good match, because IMAX has that big screen and Zeppelin obviously has that big sound. So when you combine that big sound with those big visuals, I think that's very much going to be worth the price of admission to go see a Led Zeppelin documentary in IMAX. So I'm very excited to see this, because like I said, most documentaries, even with the Beatles, we get them on streaming services like Disney Plus or Amazon or something like that. So to see a big screen documentary like this on the big screen like Led Zeppelin, I think it'll be really cool. I'm not really sure, because it's 200 theaters, I'm not really sure if it's in 70 millimeter IMAX, which is like the true IMAX format, or if it's going to be in digital IMAX. But either way, it's Led Zeppelin on the big screen in IMAX. I'm sure it's going to be really cool. And I want to cap off the show today with a very, very fun topic. This is the Liquid Death Pit Diaper. You might have seen this online. I thought this was very, very amusing. So Liquid Death Water, they're a water company. It's not actually liquefied death. They're teaming up with Depend Guards for Men. Talk about a collaboration there for the Pit Diaper, which they are dubbing the first heavy metal diaper. I didn't know this was something that heavy metal fans wanted or needed, but it's absolutely here, and I think we have to roll with that. So they're saying that this is for when you're at those sweaty, disgusting metal shows, or even just rock shows in general. We've all been there in some of these disgusting venues. I've played in and been at many, many disgusting venues throughout the world, and there's long lines, there's slipping on the gross piss-encrusted floor, there's the puke-encrusted toilets, all over the place. So you're trying to avoid bathrooms in any capacity possible when you're at these shows. And if you want to take a look here, this Pit Diaper absolutely looks the part. It's got cruelty-free quilted leather, so that's good, I guess. It's adorned with some really nice chains and spikes, so it looks very metal. It definitely fits the part, and I think it looks really, really cool. But when you think about it, of course, here's the thing, that any metal fan or any rock fan worth their salt would not need a pit diaper, okay? Because real music fans, we just piss in the pit, man. That's just how we do it. Think about it. You're already soaked in sweat. You're already soaked in potentially other bodily fluids as well, the ones that I'm not even going to mention here. So what's a little piss going to do to anybody? Am I right? What is a little piss going to harm anybody in an already sweaty and already disgusting rock and roll show? Plus, you never miss a song. You don't want to be in the bathroom when they play your favorite tune. So you don't have to go out and buy a $75 pit diaper. And that's what it costs. Even though it's already sold out, it costs $75. You don't have to do that when pissing in your pants is free. Right? Am I wrong here? Does anybody else want to join me in that? I might be only half joking. But really, you don't want to miss anything, though. I think this is a very good marketing gimmick. It's a very good one. But like I said, $75 for the pit diaper. I guess you could have that peace of mind when you're at a show. If you don't really want to piss on anybody, okay. I get that everybody, or maybe most people, probably wouldn't want to do that. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm not saying I do it either. I'm not going to admit anything here on camera of what I've done or not done at various rock and roll shows over the years. But you know what? You really can't sleep on anything these days. That's the thing with this pit diaper. It's already sold out. I remember back in the day, if something cool was released, one of these marketing gimmicks or one of these marketing items or whatever, you could wait a couple of days until you bought it. But now, if you don't get on it within the first 5 minutes, everybody else is going to have a pit diaper at the show, and you're going to be left either holding it or having to go to that really, really sketchy bathroom at the back of the venue, which has, people writing all over the walls and probably some cockroaches and rats. So whoever, it's absolutely disgusting. I played a venue in Italy many, many years ago. We were playing at this venue. We were in Italy. We were very excited to be there, but the venue didn't have an actual toilet. If I wanted to go number 1 or number 2, there was a hole in the ground. So if you've ever been to Italy, if you've ever gone to a gig in Italy, if you've gone to a venue, if you played a gig in Italy like I have, then it's absolutely insane. So I definitely could have used a pit diaper. Forget about the people in the audience. What about the people performing on stage? What about the band? Because, I'm a singer, so when I'm up on stage, I'm drinking a lot of water. There's a lot of lubrication happening, a lot of hydration happening. And then in the middle of the set, you got to go number 1, or God forbid number 2, but number 1 because of all that hydration. And then you got nowhere to go. What, are you going to just jump off stage, which I have done in the past? What, are you just going to jump off stage, go to the bathroom and come back? I have done that in the past when I played shows. But it's definitely not preferable. So not just the pit diaper, the performer diaper needs to be created by Liquid Death. So you can get that pit diaper, I guess, on the secondary market if you haven't picked it up already, or just do what real music fans do and just piss your pants in the pit. That's what real music fans do. It's kind of gross. Anyways, that is it, guys. That is the inaugural episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast. I want to thank everybody very much for joining me on this journey. It's going to be changing. It's going to be evolving. Let me know what your thoughts are of this podcast format in the comments below. Again, if you have a question for the show, if you want to talk about a particular topic here on the show, you can always hit me up on social media at Nick Chino Music, and you can always email me at nickchinomusic@gmail.com and get those questions here on the show. But I guess I'll see you guys again for another edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Until then, rock on, everybody.